What is going on, Dominators? Rico Garcia here with yet another amazing episode. Today, I think that you're really going to enjoy this because this is a topic that has really plagued anybody that's in the construction industry, especially in the restoration industry, and that is labor. Finding the right people. And there's been a lot of discussions about in previous episodes and in the industry as a general whole about the importance of building company culture, when you should start hiring, how to become an attractive corporation, an attractive company to bring in top level talent. And today, our guest is going to not only share his journey, in the construction and in the trades for obviously several generations. You'll hear his story, which is an amazing story, but then also his solution that he was able to develop as a complete package to help really fill in this gap and make sure that we as restoration contractors, people in the trades period, whether you're a GC or masonry, whatever it is that you do, it all boils down to you can only grow your business as much as the talent that you have on your roster. And the talent scenario right now is an important one, right? Because especially when you're looking at the younger generation that really is a little apprehensive about getting in the trades, what are the solutions? How to position yourself, how to become an attractive company, what the incentive packages can be. And we're going to go ahead and he's going to share with us all of these amazing tactics that you can go ahead and start implementing in your business today. But not only that, if you wanted to take it a step further and have the full-fledged step-by-step scenario on how to have this, onboarding training and literally a check by check system on how you can go ahead and implement all of these tactics into your business, literally a blueprint for hiring, always making sure that you're having fresh names that are looking to apply for your company. This is going to be one of the episodes that you're going to want to be paying close attention to, because not only do they offer an amazing consulting package, but there's also a training course that you can go ahead and take as well. So if you wanted to go ahead and take advantage of that, if you've realized that you're kind of bottlenecked at this point, you want to go ahead and get some, top level talent, and you're just not quite sure why you're not attracting the best talent out there, maybe this would be an amazing solution for you. So without further ado, let's jump into the show. Let's go.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
All right, what is going on? Matt, welcome to the show. Are you ready to help us dominate?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome, man. Cool. Do me a favor, fill in some of the gaps on my intro. Let everybody know who you are and exactly what it is that you do in the industry.
Fourth generation contractor, great grandfathers, both of them did it. Grandfather, father, uncle, very much the blue collar American dream. Started digging holes and laying bricks. Now I run the business here in Los Angeles. We also help contractors on the hiring side. So just really passionate about the industry, and there's a lot in between there, but that's the nuts and bolts.
That's awesome, dude. So for all you dominators out there, let me just talk to you real quick, because you're like, hey, the majority of the audience is either public adjusters or, restorers. And they're like, hey, what do bricks have to do with me? Well, just with a lot of my other guests, it's business principles, right? If it works in one arena, the likelihood is it'll work in your arena. And one of the things that we really want to talk about is one of the things that in our arena, there's been a lot of hum about, actually in all of the trades, which has been labor shortages. It's been, how to get good quality people, how to develop culture. So we're going to get into that hot topic as well. And I think that there's going to be a lot. I think that Matt, yourself, you're doing a lot right now in an innovative way, and understanding the pop culture, understanding the psychology of the new labor force and how we kind of need to get in front of that. And let's start off there. Like, start with your view on the industry, the construction industry as a whole, and how it's changed and where it's at right now.
Well, I like to joke, I'm a recovering sales junkie, right?
Hmm.
So I was obsessed with top line, absolutely obsessed with it. I thought, I thought as long as I had a belief for many, many years because I grew up in the business, the family business specifically, that if you sell enough work, the rest you'll be able to figure out. It's like sell work at as high margins as you can, and you'll figure there's operation people, like you can get that done. And that changed for us. That hit the fan in like 2019, 2018, 2019. But the writing was on the wall. That there was an influx of people leaving the business, less people getting into it. So the climate shifting, and I would say the biggest thing right now is that it is possible to hire, but the strategies and how you do it is completely different. Like I remember I started with the yellow pages. Like I remember sitting with my dad when the only marketing decision we made was every 6 months we'd meet with the yellow pages guy, like before internet and websites and all that stuff. That was my start. And so I saw that shift from a marketing sales perspective. Well, hiring is doing the same thing. This is an absolute disruption. But to the companies that are smart and are innovating and are putting in the time, you can do it, but it's definitely getting harder. And on top of that, it is a threat. Like the biggest threat we have right now is talent, right? That's why if I look at the acquisitions, like I have a friend of mine owns a company and he buys construction companies, right? And restoration companies. And they're solely looking at people. That's how powerful it is.
Mm. Yeah. What do you think is the major flaw in the modern contractors today, regardless of the industry, right? But contractors today on how they're looking at hiring talent?
Well, I think a lot start with the belief that it can't be done. A lot of them start with it. Like when we talk to clients, right? It's like, are there anybody out there? It's something being very difficult and something being impossible are two completely different things. And
Hmm.
I think it's a Tom Sawyer quote, right? Or it's like, it's not what you know to be true. Basically, the premise of the quote is that it's not what you don't know, it's what you know that just ain't so. And if I look at my life, it's
Yep.
the things I was so sure about that weren't actually true that killed me. And I think that's the thing for hiring for a lot of contractors. It's possible, but you got to completely reinvent the way you do this. I mean, we have 37 different proven ways to find contractors or find to hire for contractors and in the industry as a whole. Not one of them I could guarantee you are replicable to any one person listening. Not one of them. It's
Hmm.
all local market specific.
Hmm. So taking a very unique approach, very customized approach to not only the market, but the talent, to the company and everything else
Yeah, I mean, what so
in
so
order to find
my
new talent.
well, to give context, right? So in 2019, I was at the pinnacle of my family business. I was doing 2 celebrity homes. I was doing the Veterans National Cemetery. I was laying, I think, 8 or 9,000 pieces of granite. I was doing a commercial bank. Like it was like I was sitting on cloud nine, going, "My great grandfather's gone on a boat to come to this country for this moment. Like we did it." And it was a really
Right.
proud thing.
Right.
And I was ignoring my team, being like, "Hey, Matt, we need to hire. We need." I'm like, "Don't worry about it. We're selling jobs. We're, contracts, high fives, all the crazy stuff.
Hmm.
That stuff."
Yeah.
And I lost nearly $1 million in the course of like 3 weeks. They brought me in, meeting. They're like, "Hey, Matt, all these people are canceling contracts. Here's liquidated damages on these projects. Here's how inefficient we're running these jobs." And it was just like, whew, deck of cards. So I went out to try and find answers. And I couldn't find any one, like, here's the way to hire in construction, because everyone that told me something, parts of it would work, but it wasn't uniform. And so I spent literally a year and a half and nearly $1 million of my money going around consultants, books, trial and error. I did all my own interviews, all my own hiring, all my own job postings with the help of like 3 full-time assistants. And I just got obsessed. And, the fact of the matter is, here's what you need. In order for you, it's a big circle. You have to enforce culture, because if you don't enforce your culture, at some point, it'll ruin the thing that makes you unique, right? If Johnny shows up late 5 or 6 or 7 times, then Tommy, who's your hardest worker, looks and he's like, "Why am I trying so hard?" Right? But as a business owner,
Hmm.
you struggle because you're like, "I want to fire Johnny, but I can't because I need people to just show up." And being 45 minutes late is better than not having somebody, right? So you're in this weird culture
Yeah.
dynamic. So how do you fix that? Well, you got to be able to find candidates. So you got to be able to find candidates in large quantities so that you can be selective. Well, that's great. How do you do that? Well, we have 37 different ways in our course, but when you do that, when you find candidates, now you're bottlenecked because you got to be able to sift, sort, and screen them quickly. So now there's all these ways in which you can quickly move them through the process. Then you got to be able to evaluate their skill sets, because if you just bring people into the field or bring them into your company and they don't work out, now you got a culture of bringing people in and they don't work out. So now your team's like, "Oh, here's the new person. How long is this one going to last?" Right? There's that
Right.
chatter among your team members. So what I found is, like, we were talking about baking earlier before we started. Hiring is like baking a cake, and if you have one thing off, you can't do it. Like one little thing, like as I broke through a barrier, I was like, great, I know how to find candidates now. I was doing traditional hour-long interviews. I was like, I found 36 qualified interviews today. How the hell am I going to do 36 hours of interviews? Ain't going to happen, right?
Right.
Vetting stage, hiring stage. You know how many people I lost to sending out the offer letter and they would shop that to their current company and make 10% more and not even have to leave? So it was like, it's a formula for this. So it's not impossible. There's a formula that you can duplicate.
Yeah. And for context, for those, it's like, why were you guys talking about baking like off camera? Well, the reason why we were talking about baking is we're talking about how cool, cooking and like all the culinary arts have gotten with all the TV shows and baking shows and things like that. Car shows now with all the mechanics and, custom builds. And we were talking about, the importance that I think all of us in the trades. And this is, again, something that I've mentioned quite a bit on the Restoration Domination show, which is about making it cool. And this is for like the roofers don't have this issue so much because, they show off the big trucks, they show off the big boats, they show off like, their huge projects. And, that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But you know what? It also pulls in, as far as the construction industry is concerned, it pulls in a lot of talent because a lot of people that don't want to be cooped up in an office, that don't want to be a keyboard warrior, they're attracted to, they see the money that's made. So I've always called out and said, hey, for us, the rest of us in the trades, if we've carved out a nice little niche for ourselves, we should be showing it off. And not because we want to brag, not because we want to boast, but because we want to maintain the integrity, right, of the workforce. And what I mean by integrity is like, how do we get those people in? And you were talking about that. So, kind of give us your view on, what contractors should do as far as how they should be perceived in their industry, in their communities.
The easiest way to think about it, and I'm someone who struggled with this, right? Like I grew up in the business where my dad was like, hey man, like we don't brag, like we don't talk about that. People would ask us how much we make. My dad would be like, we do okay. Right. And I'm like, man, you got a lot of money, Pops. Like, so like a lot, like, I mean, he'd have $500,000 of checks in his pocket. Right. And we'd be going to the ATM or whatever, the bank, and he'd be like, yeah, we do okay. Up and down.
Yeah.
So that's how I was taught. But yeah. So I think the easiest thing, if you could take away one actionable strategy, it's think of your hiring like you do marketing your business to customers. So, for example, is it bragging to show your really kick-ass work that you do to customers? Are you bragging? Are you being over the top? Hey, look at this amazing project I just did for, Jane. Is that bragging? Is it bragging to put a really cool video on your website and show, the quality of work, how your team follows up, who your team is? Is that bragging? Is it bragging to have a really nice looking website? Is it bragging to have trucks with logos that show off your services? The answer is no. Right. And it took the construction industry a while to get there because we started with the yellow pages, which was, quarter page, half page, full page ads. But I think psychologically we've done it. And now it's like the next evolution of that is all of the tactics and strategies and fundamentals from marketing should flood into your hiring. Like, how are you following up? Are you excited? Are you treating your leads like gold? Well, the average contractor we talk to is getting back to a candidate in like a day and a half. Would you do that to a customer? Lead comes in, right? Call him back 2 days later, 3 days later. Hey, so I see you reached out, right? What about a perfect customer? Yeah. Would you put them to the front of the line, an amazing lead that comes in? Or would you put them through the same process? Like if you ask yourself, if you literally put on your marketing hat and we're like, okay, I'm going to market and treat hiring like marketing, I guarantee you'd be 10x ahead of the game just with that one psychology switch.
Yeah. And again, this is something that we've spoken about so many times. It's just like they, most people look at it as totally separate events. They look at marketing for the purposes of selling new jobs, new projects. But they totally forget that, trying to acquire talent, you still got to market to them as well. Like they're vetting, especially today where you have an online presence, you have your website, you have your social media pages, you've got your LinkedIn profiles, like all of these things. It's so easy to, do your due diligence on who you're even going to put an application into. Back in the day, I remember like looking in the classifieds, like that was it. That was all the information you got. Whatever you saw in print, it's like hiring for ABC position, X amount of potential, and that was it. You had to physically walk in to see what was going on. People don't really have that issue now, right? So you need to treat that as a part of your marketing. So one of the things that you and I were talking about before the cameras were rolling was the quote unquote newer generation, where they're being bombarded with all of these, lifestyle opportunities, right? Hanging out by the beach on their phone, um, making tons of money. And look, by the way, in full disclosure, I'm one of those cats as well. Like I'm, huge into affiliate marketing. I'm, huge into ecom, like, because why not? It's there. Why not take advantage of it? Right. And we were talking about like how difficult it is to romance the construction and the trades. What's been your approach to that now? And I know that you're in the community, I mean, basically nationwide. You got a lot of big players behind you as well. Talk to me about, number one, what you see on that front, what we could do differently, and then kind of what you personally are doing now to elevate the trades as a whole.
Well, if I'm a company, and it doesn't matter, restoration or construction or general we've seen it across the board. The first thing I need is well, in no particular order, I need a career video. I need a 90-second to 2-minute long video that showcases my company, my trucks, who we are, the type of work I do. I need my potential candidate to, number one, watch this video, and number two, fall in love with the potential company. If I don't have that asset, I need it. And then you need to really dig deep on incentives. So we help companies get really creative with what they do. So one of the things is an honest employee audit. So you go around to your team and you start really drilling into, hey, Mike, I'd love to talk to you. Pull them aside. You've been working here 7 years. What do you love about working here? And you do that for all of the people that you would want to clone, I say, right, or duplicate. And you start to notice, oh, wow, you really like the fact that we're a small company. You get to work with the owner on a day-to-day basis. I'm not 7 layers deep and, we have 1,000 people. So it's an exercise in, do I have this career video asset? There's another exercise. It's called, would you work for you? If you Google your company right now and only go off of what you see online, are you excited to apply and work for that company? Is there anything that sticks out, right? Are there pictures? Is there a website? Is there that career video where you go, wow, I have to apply for that company? If you can't go through that exercise, you don't have the right things. The other thing is the creativity. So back to that, we find like one of the things that works really well for clients, we have a demolition contractor, right? And what he did is he switched his working hours to 4 10-hour days. So he has crews. Some of his crews get Fridays off. So they're still working their 40 hours. They get Fridays off. He also does a wellness program where once a week he gets like a, mid-level massage for all of his guys in the field, where, it costs like 30, 40 bucks a week. He's got, 40 guys. But when you do the math on how much easier it is for him to acquire talent, longevity, workers' comp claims go down. It's like, it's that we need that next level creativity, or what are the incentives that we can offer the team to work here? And it's not always about money. It's not always $2 an hour more. It's about how do you build culture and what are the things you can do? And you can audit this. Like we tell clients, look in large cities, look at, if you're located in whatever state it is, right? Look at some of the largest cities and the biggest companies and see what they're doing from an incentive perspective, because you don't have to be the first person to offer these incentives. You just have to be the first person in your local area to do it. But, it's about filling these voids in many areas that make you a really exciting company. There's no like magic bullet where it's like, if you do this one thing, you'll hit this result, but you do a lot of little things and you're going to be well ahead of the game.
So I want to go ahead and talk to you because sometimes people are very far removed, and I want to always put shit back in reality, right? So to no fault of your own, you are 4th generation. However, that being said, you were boots on the ground for like you didn't just get a cushy office job, right? And you were talking about off camera about how you have extremely large people that you've helped on the recruiting side, but then you also have, and they're doing multiple millions of dollars. And then some of your smallest clients are like, they're doing like $90,000 in revenue. Yeah. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because number one, I know that some people will be like, oh, well, you've been at this for so long. It's a family business. Your set of problems are different from my set of problems. You've got celebrity clients. I'm trying to figure out where my next, Betty Jones is coming from. And it's just not the case, right? And then, well, great, maybe you've got $1 million clients. Well, I'm not making millions of dollars in revenue, but you have $80,000, $90,000 clients as well that are, a handyman. So what I want to put into context is sometimes when we talk about incentives and sometimes when we talk about culture, there's a lot of business owners that just simply do not have the financial wherewithal or the creativity to be like, man, I'm just trying to figure out like where my next project's coming from. How do I incentivize people to come and work for me? How do I do that without slitting my own throat and bleeding my business dry? So what are some of the mental mechanics or maybe some tactical things that people can do that are simple things that really don't add to the financial strain or burden of a company in their earlier stages?
I mean, I've been there. So, I started picking up trash on job sites. That was my first job. And for anybody that thinks the family business, I mean, I was probably 18, 19, and we had, I mean, my dad was on every job and we were running. So I had actually, in my opinion, worse because my dad was like, nobody will ever work as hard as family. You can't trust anybody. Like, I was in a small business and I was fed things that prevented me from growing. So I love the mental mechanics question because for me, that's what I had to break out of. Like, we were not a big company at all. I mean, we had 2 small crews. Dad was doing everything. Like, I had to micromanage, he micromanaged. So this is my favorite part because I can relate. This feels like just yesterday. One of the big things is if the branding and positioning, when I started to understand that branding, positioning, and marketing with my company is when I started to have the luxury to then focus a little bit more on hiring. So I want to be clear. I solved branding, marketing, positioning first. I had margins. I had a little bit of flexibility. I had consistent work. I don't know that if it's very difficult in this economy candidate economy, if you will, to without having consistent work, attract A players because you're not going to sit home. That person is not going to sit home for 2 days out of the week because your work is inconsistent, right? Or you work for really, not ideal clients, right? And they're getting yelled at on the jobs or the client's just horrible. It's like, they're going to go, you know what? I'm going to go work somewhere else. So you definitely need to understand, in my opinion, like the mental mechanics is focusing on the sales and marketing strategy is super, super important. Like, what is your brand? And brand to me, like I'm a simple guy. I got no business background, right? So somebody asked me how to define brand. I'm like, brand to me is a promise you make to your customers. You have 2 brands, one to your customers and one to your employees. That's it. What am I promising every day to my clients? And then how do I make sure everyone on the team is on board to fulfill that promise? Like, that's how simple I am because I don't know any better. I have no business background like that. So you got to get focused on that and you got to get focused on the sales and marketing. And what's nice about that is there's so many people out there that have figured this out and done it well that you can model. Like, that stuff's fairly simple to model and audit if you take the time. But you got to be taking, like, I remember being in a truck and I'm on job sites. My foreman would call out. I'd be laying brick. I'd be like, it was a mess. I'm doing everything. I had a rule. I would set 4 hours a week every week that I worked on the business, no matter what. Like, I didn't care if that was Saturdays, Sundays. So in the business I was on jobs, I was running around, I was dealing with clients, I was doing this. 4 hours was like, what's the one thing I can do this week? Who am I studying, right? Who's 3 steps ahead of me? I heard a saying, and this will help, I think, for somebody listening, where I used to get stuck. And I heard the saying was basically like a mentor is anybody who's a few steps ahead of you. Like an older brother is a mentor to a younger brother. And I went, oh crap, I have a friend of mine who owns a company and he's doing 3 or 4 times what I'm doing. Not the ideal scenario, right? Not my like dream vision of where I was trying to take the company, but he's definitely had some stuff figured out. So I used to meet him for lunch on Sundays, and I would buy him lunch and I'd sit down and be like, what are you doing with this? Or how'd you hire this person? Or what'd you do with that? That was part of my 4 hours to work on the business. So, I mean, I think that you start to untangle knots if the first step is to calendar it. I had 4 hours non-negotiable that I was not in the business. I wasn't doing anything that was attributed to revenue. Everything was to grow the business, to work on the strategy and the high level growth. Like, if business owners did that, if you did that for 6 months and you calendared the time and then you had somebody that you could model or work with or study, it'd be impossible for you to not have amazing breakthrough results. Just literally impossible, just sheer numbers.
And one of the great things, and this is just an additional like commentary, things that I've gone through myself, right, is when you have a uh, set amount of time that you just set aside, and you're like, I'm working on my business. Don't think for a second, like, we've all heard of writer's block, right, where you're just kind of staring into a blank screen, and you're like, man, what am I supposed to do now? That's part of the process. Accept that sometimes you're going to be like, okay, I need to work on the business. I need to come up with new ideas, and new ideas are not going to come. But there's something magical about having that time with yourself and dedicating that to wanting to be creative, wanting to put, move the needle. And eventually what's going to happen is these small little ideas are going to spark, right? And another thing that I would definitely say, maybe this worked for you, is, cross industry. What's working not only in your industry, but what's working in other industries, even if it's totally unrelated. Sometimes you'll get a new marketing idea. Sometimes you'll get a new hiring idea. What's working, as far as incentives are concerned, right? And even just doing very basic investigative work on your business that you're like, this doesn't really feel like I'm moving the needle. Sometimes like some of the best and brightest ideas come out of those moments.
I agree, and I think one thing to add to that is I'm just thinking back on my journey, is you gotta, like, I constantly had to remind myself of what was possible. So I joined an association. I joined the Mason Contractors Association, and I said, "Who's your most successful member?" And they gave me the guy's name, and then I reached out to him and I'm like, "Hey, I'm growing this business, and I'd love to just chat." So we get on this call. I start talking to him. He's like, "What's your biggest problem?" I tell him I got a year's worth of ideas in literally a 30-minute call, right? Then he's
Yep.
like, I kept asking him about his operation. I'm like, how do guy does more than 9 figures. I'll protect his name, but very, very
Mm-hmm.
well. 5 companies, over $100 million a year, well over 100. And he's like, "Do you want to see it?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll be on a plane. You tell me where, when, up there." So I fly out, and
Right.
for me, I was able to break through the limiting belief structure, basically the thought process, because the whole time I'm like, this can't be possible, but I'm here. This can't be possible, but I'm here. Like, how do you do this? I mean, the guy's got, thousands of employees. We're walking through rooms and he knows and I'm just like, my mind couldn't comprehend it. I think at the time I might have had 2 crews, maybe 3 at that point. I was completely out of the fulfillment of work, but I was still very heavily involved in the business, financials, and selling. Like, I was doing probably 70% of the company's sales at this point. And I couldn't wrap my head around this guy, like, sitting in an executive meeting running 5 companies, and he's like got the head of each company. And so when you see what's possible and it's in front of you, you start to break down that resistance. And I think it creates space for you to find those ideas. Like, I believed it, but I didn't really believe it. Like when somebody tells you how much money they make, you're like,
Right.
really? And then you're like, can I see? Like, show me the bank statement. Like, it's that human kind of like,
Can I see?
like, show me the,
Yeah.
you were talking about, your background in the financial side of things. Like, you're like, can I see? Like, let me see it though. Like, that's, I think,
It's
a
like
huge
that one scene in the Wolf of Wall Street movie where he's like, "You show me a pay stub for 70,000 right now, and I quit my job and I work for you." Right? Sometimes, even as an entrepreneur, and we lose sight of this. And listen, and maybe you experienced this with your father, and your father experienced it, with previous generations. Like, being an entrepreneur sometimes is very, very lonely, because you're in the mix and you're trying to grow your business, and call a spade a spade. Sometimes we don't have all the answers, right? And we need to find the answers. And there's this constant push between the negativity of the human mind saying, this is it, this is as good as it's going to get, and then the hopefulness of the human spirit that says, wait, there's more. There's more that we can achieve here. But then that void, that blackness, that abyss in between, where you're like, but I don't have any of the answers. Where do I get them? And sometimes all it takes is reaching out to somebody, going to see a new location, going to see how somebody else runs their business. And you're like, whoa, this is like real. Like, this really exists. And that's sometimes all it takes to really get to the next level.
Yeah, I joke with people all the time. I say, look, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have stuck in the family business. I would have gone and worked for other companies. Like my dad was like, "Hey, go work for other people," but he kind of said it like, haphazardly. He was like, "Yeah, go work for other people," wink, wink, like, but don't come back if we do. Kind of. My dad's an old school Italian guy, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, that's what it was. He's like, "But you'll never come back," like kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
if I could go back in time, I would have worked for other companies because it amazes me still to this day when you study big companies, right, with a lot of moving parts. One of the things I've realized, and like us smaller companies can take a lot from this, is they do a lot with consultants. I didn't even really understand what that was. Like they hire people who have spent 20, 30, 40 years in an industry. They pay them 5, 10 grand or whatever, 15 grand, and they sit down for 4 hours and they get all the information. You're basically buying 20 years of experience, testing, knowledge in 4 hours. And so,
And more importantly, you're buying an outside perspective, which is, again, look, how many of us, and again, this I think this applies pretty much to every single human. At some point, you probably had the conversation to be like, hey, that relationship is not good for you. And they're like, and you're like, this is amazing. What are you talking about? And it's like, you're like, what, this looks great from my perspective, but all your friends and your family are like, oh, or vice versa. You tell other people like, hey, that relationship's not good for you, or this job isn't good for you, or whatever. And they'll give you this whole laundry list of reasons why, but because people are so close in the mix that they just don't see it, right? Sometimes just buying that outside perspective is so important.
It's huge. And
so what I want to talk about is I want you to go ahead and share, like, if you had one of these moments where, consultants were important to you. I definitely would want for you to go ahead and share that. But before you do that, let's just go ahead and take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. Dominators, let's face it, your company will make it or break it on the backs of your estimating team. But if we're honest here for a second, what tools have you actually given them to succeed? The Actionable Profile is the newest tool inside of your estimator's toolbox, or at the very least, it should be. The Actionable Xactimate Profile is a data-driven solution that provides real-time estimating guidance on the fly. It checks for both overages, omissions in your estimates in real time, leading your team to having much more accurate scopes each and every single time that they're writing an estimate. Avoid any kind of potential conflict with the adjuster and ensure that your estimates include every single warranted line item with the Actionable Xactimate Profile. Get your free demo today. If you head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate, we've got an amazing offer for you. Again, head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate and get your free demo today. Are you dominating the insurance agent referral market? If you're not getting referrals from insurance agents, then let me tell you something. You need to speak to Jerry Edel. Are you ready to grow? Can your business actually handle it? Well, Jerry Edel is a specialist at referral revenue from insurance agents. He started way back in the 70s as a restoration technician, and 34 years later ended up as the national sales trainer for one of the largest restoration franchise companies in the good old US of A. And for the past 16 years, he's been helping restoration contractors succeed at creating long-term referral revenue from insurance agents. So schedule a call with Jerry today. Let him guide you through your growth process so that you don't grow yourself out of business. All you have to do is go to jerryedel.com/dominate. Again, that's Jerry, GERRYEDTL.com/dominate. Hey Dominators, one claim can improve your profitability and accelerate your cash flow while focusing more on what matters most, which is running your business. They know that managing insurance billing and collections on disaster mitigation jobs can be painful. And listen, dealing with adjusters that are always pushing back on your claims documents, carriers that delay their payments for months on end, and your team spends a ton of time and effort only to get suboptimal outcomes most of the time. But over at One Claim, they know how to work with adjusters and how to justify and settle your claims. Their team of attorneys are well-trained claims advocates, and they have experience in regulations, policies, and all the laws that pertain to disaster mitigation, as well as homeowners insurance. They know all the ins and outs and leverage that expertise to increase your overall collections on disaster mitigation work. They work also with proprietary software systems that enable their claims advocates to push your invoices through the carrier's billing process quickly. They pride themselves on insurance leading processing times. Go ahead and contact them today for a free consultation. If you head on over to oneclaimsolution.com/dominate, you can go ahead and pop in your information and get your free consultation today. Again, that is oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. I want to let you in on a little secret, and that's the number one reason why businesses don't sell is that the owners a lot of times don't even realize that they need a plan for the actual sale of the business. And before you can start working on increasing the value of your business, you need to determine what's necessary to even have a sellable business. This is where Restoration Brokers of America can really help you begin to plan the overall exit process and ensure that you obtain the maximum value for your business. You've worked hard to build it. Now let RBA work hard to sell it. If you want more information, visit sellmyrestorationbusiness.com. Once again, that's sellmyrestorationbusiness.com and get on the fast track to getting the most for your business. Hey, Dominators, quick question. Are you looking to attract top industry talent? Well, I'm here to tell you that Weilander is the go-to recruiting company in order to attract the best talent available inside of the restoration arena, period. Now, why do I say that? Well, simple. With over 1,000 placements, and more importantly, with experience in all 50 states, as well as in good old Canada, Weilander is going to be able to find the right fit for you and your company. Weilander not only has the expertise, but more importantly, they already have the connections to make sure that they find that perfect fit for you and your organization. So listen, we all know that time is money. So stop wasting time just sifting through resume after resume and let Weilander do the heavy lifting for you. Get back to what it is that you're good at. Get back to money-making activities. Call Weilander today. Let them help you find that next superstar in your organization. All right, guys. So we're back. So what I wanted to go ahead and ask was, did you have a moment in your career where this kind of like opened up where consultants were really useful to you? Mentors, obviously you mentioned a mentor, but did you employ consultants to help you scale your business?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was reading a lot of books. I started reading books about marketing, sales early on, and because it bugged me that I didn't feel like I had control of the growth of the company. Um, and I hired quite a few consultants, but one of the wasn't even a consultant, but I wanted to reach out to businesses that were similar but weren't competitive. So there was a foundation company that was much bigger than us. They were doing, gosh, I mean, more than 50 million bucks a year, right? Big company. And I said, look, I'm not competitive, but I'd love to audit your local business and kind of understand, like, I'd love to just walk it and see, like, if I'll, whatever you want, I'll buy your team lunch. And they didn't even want to take anything. Like, no problem. The owner's great. So I sit down with the owner of this company who built it in the span of 20 years, really, really sharp, impressive guy. And he takes me through, and this is the beauty of investing time into your business, working on your business versus in it. So I go and I'm like, hey, I just literally just want to kind of understand your story, your growth, and see how all this works. So he's showing me, like, how they set up their tools and the roll call. And I'm just getting ideas because I'm seeing this machine work, right? Because it's a machine at that scale. And we were not anything near this. And I'm taking notes and I'm asking him, like, what are the things that you would do differently? Where were your breakthroughs? I'm just picking his brain, not anything crazy in terms of questions. And he looks at me and he goes, what's funny? He goes, we get a lot of calls for masonry work. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, we get, a couple hundred calls a day. And a lot of them are like cracked walls or things that we don't even do. He goes, would you be interested in those? And I was like, you're kidding. And he's like, yeah. He's like, that would be great. Because my team, clients always get mad. And so next thing I know, I'm getting like 10 or 15 calls a day, just referral. And I'm talking to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year worth of work. So now I got this relationship. I'm getting all this referral work. I got all these ideas. And then I built a relationship with him. I can go back to him and be like, hey, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on that? So I think, having connections locally in the industry, it goes back to not being a flashy industry. We're not a flashy industry, construction. I think we're getting there, right? More showy. This guy wasn't showy, but he had such an open heart. If I just took the time to go out of my way, he's like, you know what, Matt? I would love to do this. And I'm like, why is that? He goes, because no one's ever asked me this in 27 years. He said, no one's ever come to me and asked me this. He says, I'm very proud of what I built. I think I have a lot of things I can show, and no one's ever asked. And I went, wow, how interesting. This guy's almost as excited as I am to learn about this stuff. So I mean, that's the shortcut, right? That's one of the big shortcuts. And then you start to layer in all the things you can learn from them, but huge shortcut.
That's amazing. So how are you, talk to us about the consulting arm of what you do. Obviously your masonry business is doing absolutely amazing. You got celebrity clients left and right. All of this stuff is great. How are you helping? Talk to us about the consulting arm and what that's all about.
Yeah. So the business got started on accident. I had the hiring issue I told you about, set out to figure out what worked, modeled it. It started to work for me. And I ended up having a waiting list of candidates. So life was amazing. My contractor friends were like, Matt, you're not as stressed. And I'm like, yeah, because I have candidates now. And so I just started going to, dinners and lunches with contractors I knew and giving them tips. And then it kind of grew from there. My daughter, was getting younger, and I was like, or my daughter was born and she was young. And I said, you know what? I can't be going to all these like lunches and dinners, because Marjorie was like, my other half was like, hey, you went from working all stressed, afraid you're going to lose the business, to now like things are great. Now you're working more, showing everyone how to do this. Like, we got to figure this out. So I decided to make a course.
Right.
Course, the contractor hiring course. We got together with ZipRecruiter, Indeed, got their endorsement. Went way further than I ever thought it would. The feedback on it. And then I realized a lot of contractors were like, two things came up. One was like, well, but how do I know this really works? Was one. And then the second was, I don't have the time to do this. And I went, you know what? Let's just do it for them. Like, let's just build everything I teach. Let's just literally like make, because I never saw my dad growing up because he worked all the time. So like, this is a passion project for me. It wasn't like a, let's go make more money. So we put it into a solution, and I set out to solve what I believe to be the biggest pain points, which were job postings, resume screening, candidate hour. Like, businesses, small, medium, or large, the biggest constraint is time and resources. So it's like, how do I make this process efficient and effective? So we do the job postings, we do the candidate reach out, we do the initial screening interview. So if you're a business owner, you literally get, it's like, hey, we talked to this person. When do you want to schedule the interview? They're confirmed, they're vetted, they're approved. And so we just tried to take the biggest pain points out of the hiring process in construction.
And what does that look like as a contractor on our end? Let's say that we reach out to you. We're like, hey, cool. Yeah, I'm struggling with this. I want to go ahead and have a better outward presence in my local market. What are some of the, broad strokes on what you actually help them do, step by step? Like, what's like step one?
Yeah. So step one, you hop on a call with the team, and we basically talk through your goals, right? And what you're looking to do. And so far, we haven't had anybody on those calls that we can't help you. But assuming that goes well, the next step is, it's two parts, right? One is we've got kind of this formula, if you will, of how we position you well. So you need the career video. So my team handles everything. Like, we literally will send you what you need to be able to film that, how to film it. We cut the video, we edit it. Like, I am all about ease and efficiency, but we get you what we call the strong foundation. You need a career video. You need certain visual assets. You need headlines. You need to audit your current team, because we need to make sure that they're happy. So everything you do is with the click of a button, right? So like, you as the customer don't have to deal with any of this. Like, we're like, hey, send this link out to your team. Have them click 1 through 10 on these 5 questions. We'll handle everything else. Or, hey, set up a Zoom call with 4 people. We'll coordinate everything. Don't worry about it. In 2 weeks, you'll be sent back a video that you're going to love. So once we get that strong foundation, then the next thing is the ongoing, right? Because now I've got the asset structure figured out. I need to scale that. So my team will post the job descriptions, do the keyword research, audit your competitors. And what you end up with is a full-fledged hiring department that you don't have inside your company. So here's what it looks like in real time. You'll get an email, and it'll be like, hey, Jack, here's 5 candidates that we think look good. We do our own breakdown assessment. Then we have their resume. And all you do is go, yes, no, yes, yes, no. And then what happens is those candidates show up on your calendar. We confirm them. We reach out to them. We've done all your pre-screening. So you're never talking to people who don't have driver's licenses, live too far, or have horrible attitudes. Like, that's gone. You're never looking at a resume ever again. That's gone. So you show up to this interview. If you like them, we've designed a way for you to skills assess them. So we've done that as part of the initial process. So you're like, hey, I like Tom. He's an awesome, I think he'd be great in the field as a tech. Okay, well, let's verify that he's got some computer skills. We'll send him the computer assessment, 2nd round interview. We'll coordinate all that, my team. If you like them, we'll do the hiring letter, background check, we'll schedule and coordinate all of that. For all the candidates you don't like, we'll let them know for you so your brand's not associated with saying, hey, this isn't a good fit. So we literally do all of it for a small monthly fee, like ongoing. And then we backlog candidates and we store them so that when you say, hey, I need a XYZ position, it's like, oh, well, did we get any resumes in the last 3 months for that position? So it's literally, I mean, your business owner, the hardest thing you're doing is showing up to your final vetted approved interviews. That's it.
Right. And it's like anybody who's hired or has gone through that hiring process, the application review process alone is so time consuming. It's daunting. Sometimes you're reading this, you're like, why am I reading this? And it's like, it's kind of disheartening sometimes, right? Because you know you need this position, you want to fill this position, but then sometimes you get these, resumes that just, you're like, did they even read the ad? Like what's going on? And this is like, 4 minutes of your time at a clip that you're never going to get back. So eliminating as many things off of the business owner's plate, making sure that everything is rolling smooth. I mean, just the time savings alone, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it keeps people motivated, right? You're not looking at you're not frustrated. Like when you get an email from us, it's a report, how many candidates, like we're giving you optics, but also you're getting all qualified people. So now we find our clients are excited now because you're not 98% of the junk you never see. So it's just like, hey, here's 9 qualified resumes, and like,
you're seeing
I like
top
this
quality people.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're changing the lens, the perspective in a way.
Yeah,
right. So,
exactly.
I'm just thinking about this now, like, as like, this is a live thought. It's like, you know what? It kind of changes your perspective on life. It changes your perspective on what's possible out there. Because if you're not being bombarded with all of these horrible interviews, trying to find that one needle in a haystack, and all of a sudden now every time you open your inbox, you're seeing diamonds and all these great candidates that could potentially be the one, that changes your perspective on, the overall hiring arena.
Yeah, and we do the digging, right? So like I was just in a team meeting on Friday, and one of the hires our clients made, he was on his resume, he was a school teacher. But before that, he was in construction sales. He had that on his resume in fine print. He was like, school teacher for X amount of years in construction sales. So my team reaches out. Most business owners, because they're so busy, never would have had the time or the wherewithal to catch that on the resume, reach out. This guy, I mean, he's amazing. He's background checked. He's ready to go. He's worked in a school system for 8 years. He's good with technology, and he remembers all the stuff he did in construction. Like, I mean, but his resume didn't show that. So, it's that digging too, where you wouldn't necessarily do that if you were just like, click, another junk one, click, another junk one. You're not investing that time. My team can do that.
Typically, what's the turnaround? What can an average company look like as far as saying, okay, cool, once we get this program up and going, I should start getting candidates when?
I mean, we've had candidates hire within like the first 6 days, literally. I mean, that's a freak result because we're still building assets. Like we put we do our research, competitor research, internal research. So we're looking at your competitors and what they're doing. We're auditing your internal team to figure out what they like about working with you. And we're trying to make you the most desirable company online as possible, right? Because we're competing locally. And some markets are really competitive and some aren't. But we have a tiered approach. So there's 6 tiers to how we do it. We go from organic postings to sponsored postings to geofencing to basically partner lists, referral lists. Like we've got a stepped approach. You see a lot of traction typically within the first like 3, 4, 5 weeks. You're starting to get resumes. We're fine tuning, but here's the nice part. We're always adjusting and testing. That's the other thing that the average contractor doesn't have time to do. Do you have time to run 3 different headlines on job ads and track the data and the click-through rate? Chances are probably not. Do you have time to be able to say, oh, wait, the last person you hired, where did they come from? Where did they work? Can I geofence that company? Do they have other people? And when I say geofence, it's a technology to put basically an invisible fence around a location and then bombard that location with ads, specifically hiring ads.
Yes.
So there's all this depth that we can do that makes our process great, that it's just, A, most business owners don't want to do it. B, they don't have the time. And C, it's so technical. I would equate it to back in the day. I remember when companies were getting websites, right? It was like all you had to do was be one of the first companies to have a website and you were good. And then everyone got websites. And then this beautiful thing called SEO came out. And it was like, well, now you need to do all these behind the scenes stuff so that your website shows up because every Tom, Mike, and Joe has a website. And hiring's like that now too, where everyone's
Right.
just going to Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Craigslist. So how do you stand out? Where do you go? That's kind of the meat and potatoes of what we do.
That's awesome. And as far as positioning is concerned, um, what I notice a lot of people, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well as business owners, is they start hiring for the position after they realize that they need the position. Me personally, I think that that's a really bad approach, right? Like you should be marketing for positions fairly often, right? Like you should have a pool of people ready to go if that position opens up or if you need to expand, whatever the case may be. What's your take on that? Do you feel that people are making a mistake when it comes to their overall approach to hiring? How should they look at the entire situation?
Hire early, hire often. I mean, that's the name of the game. If you think you're going to need somebody, start looking. Um,
Mm,
that's the easy way to look at it. But the biggest thing is, so we when we built all this out, we have what we call maintenance mode. So basically, my team will keep the job postings live. So we have basically an active hiring rate monthly, and then we have a maintenance mode. Maintenance mode is where we keep the organic postings going and we do a little bit of outreach, but we're essentially building the candidate pool, keeping people warm because chances are in the next 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, you're either going to have someone leave, someone's going to get sick, something's going to happen, or you're going to expand. Like the likelihood that either the worst case or the best case doesn't happen for most businesses is you're betting against Mother Nature at that point, right? Like you're either the
right.
likelihood that you don't score one big job and you're like, oh my gosh, I need two more techs or I need another salesperson. So, and we ask most businesses, we say, hey, if I could get you the perfect salesperson, the perfect tech, the perfect foreman, would you take them? And they go, well, even companies who say they're not hiring are still hiring for A players,
Right.
which is
Of
an
course.
interesting concept. So
Right.
having those hooks in the water and the ability to get those. We had a client actually last week, and they were like, "Turn it off. We're done. We're in maintenance. Like we can't take any more people on." We're like, "All right, great. Well, we got this amazing person. He wants to basically be like a field trainer. He wants to teach." And the client was like, "Oh, shoot,
Mm,
actually, I think we need someone like this, you know." And it's that concept of
right.
like not hiring at a base level, but when amazing people cross our desk, I haven't found a business yet that hasn't said, well, of course I want this person. And they happen to be moving. It was a relocation. That person's wife was getting a job in this small town to be closer to their mother who was sick. And this person had all these skill sets. And if we didn't have that job posting out there to capture that, I mean, this person would have been hired somewhere else within the first couple weeks.
Right. Right. Yeah. And sometimes that's funny, right? Because again, as a business owner, look, what are you constantly trying to do? You're trying to get better marketing. You're trying to facilitate sales. You're trying to increase profitability. You're trying to get your time back as a business owner. And if any one of those boxes is checked by an A player, even if you weren't really ready to hire, you're going to heavily, you're like, we have to make space because this is the person that I was looking for. And again, talent being as tight as it is, when you do have talent come through the door, you're like, I want to take advantage of this. Because again, those kind of people, they get hired up quick, and for the most part, they usually don't leave very quick, right? Because nobody wants to lose an A player. So it's amazing to have that constant, quote unquote, that marketing for the hiring process for your company to consistently be out there and be looking for this new talent. So where does someone go? Let's say that someone's listening to this and they're like, man, you know what? I really want this. I need this. I like this overall approach. They want to learn more. They want to sign up. Where do they go to find that information?
Yeah, the website's probably the best place, the contractor consultants plural.com.
Awesome. And I will leave a link in the video description as well as in the show notes below. One thing that I want to go ahead and wrap up with here is always like to talk about books. Some of the biggest books that have caused a profound impact or that changed your entrepreneurial life. Do you have a top three that you would recommend? If we were just like meeting at a coffee shop and I'm like, hey, what three books should I read that could change my business life? Do you have a top three?
Yeah, there's a book, Keith Cunningham. It's called The Road Less Stupid. Really, really simplified
Mm-hmm.
business as a whole for me was a big one. The another one was Think and Grow Rich. Another good book. And then I like Jay Abrahams. He's a prolific marketer. Anything that he
Mm.
has is amazing. I mean, he's really one of the people who invented a lot of what we see now. I mean, he did like high ticket seminars in the '80s where he was charging $5,000 when the average seminar was like a couple $100 to go to. I mean, his stuff is really and referral partners he talks about too.
That's awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to hang out with us today and share your business journey and everything that you're doing for the industry. I really appreciate your overall approach to trying to put the trades back on the map in the sense of making it cool, making it sexy, making it part of pop culture. Again, I think that a lot of us contractors need to be doing much more on that side, not to boast, not to flaunt, but to really, integrate with what's actually attracting people today. And in a lot of ways, that's part of the culture. And I know that you got some potential shows that you have on the horizon as well, right? You mentioned something like that.
Yeah, we're working on a TV show. I think that'll go to network in, gosh, I mean, soon. Within about a week and a half, 2 weeks, they'll start shopping it. So we'll see.
That's awesome, man. Well, best of luck to you, brother. Thank you so much for all of your time and expertise. And all those dominators out there, make sure that you check out the video description or should I say the link to the website in the video description as well as in the show notes below. And as always, hustle, hack, dominate. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your #1 resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.